The presentation is muted. When we come to questions, well, and the presentation is recorded, but when it comes to questions, we will stop recording. So thank you all for being here. I'm here, and Jon Bloom from the Workers Defense League is here. Some of you have already spoken to him, and some of you have not met with him yet. He has been extraordinarily helpful, informative, and just, you know, a general all-around information source for unemployment. And he's here with me today, and he has some things to share also. So, you know, we'd like to make sure that you get all your questions answered, or as much as possible. But if you don't, or something comes up later, please feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Jon. And again, we'll drop his email in the chat later on.
You'll drop my phone number.
I'm sorry, what? Your
You'll
phone
drop
number,
my
right?
phone
Sorry, your phone
Yeah.
number, not right. Exactly.
I'm-
Sorry. But you know, we'll start out. If everybody wants to share who they are or where they are from, or both, please feel free to drop your number in the chat. So we have two chat monitors. Holly Clark and Rebecca Smart are chat monitors. We also have in the room young Mencio, who has a lot of information about unemployment, and Lynn Turner, who's a VP for part-timers. Is, you know, so if you have questions during the presentation, reach out to them directly, and they can, right. And Rebecca Smart is going to keep track of people who need muting. So she'll be in charge of that if you come off mute during the presentation. I think that's it. And if anybody has any other questions, just drop them in the chat during the presentation, and we will make sure to have them answered at some point during this meeting. Okay, so I'm going to share, and hopefully, we'll share my screen, and we'll start on, oops, no, that's not working now. All right, hold on. Sorry, it just worked 2 minutes ago. But of course, you know, who here hasn't?
Maybe Jon could just start talking.
Sure, Jon, do you want to say a few things before we start?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you want the format to be, but yeah,
Yeah, I
can
can go through the presentation. Thanks, Marcia. I'm going to actually share the screen for the presentation, and then afterwards, you know, Jon, the last time we did this, Jon filled in whenever something was necessary. Can everybody see the screen now? Can everybody see the screen? Okay, good. Okay. All right. So for today's agenda, we're going to cover unemployment insurance, you know, what the claims are, what it means to have a claim, what the meaning of reasonable assurance is. And Jon made a special point of making sure that we covered this because it's really important to everyone here. How to file a claim for the first time, and how to contest a denial. So I think I skipped one. Wait, here. In 1935, the Social Security Act established unemployment as a worker protection. The work of Social Security was to establish financial stability to our society, and unemployment insurance is financial stability. And we can see from its use during the pandemic and all, you know, what's happened over the last few years, that it's really an important right that we all understand that we have. I know people, you know, I wanted to make a special point of saying that some people feel that it is, you know, feel embarrassed to accept unemployment. It's a worker's right to accept unemployment and to apply for unemployment, and it's paid for and, you know, in the system by the employer. So, so the general, you know, so our only employers pay into the state unemployment insurance fund, and it's a tax on the employers, and each employer has an account which is drawn upon when a client like me or you applies. But there are many large employers such as CUNY that are self-insured, which means that instead of paying quarterly a tax to the fund, CUNY pays dollar for dollar as claims are made. Oops. All right. So a UI or unemployment claim is for 52 weeks, right? It's for the whole year, but the claim is only paid for 26. So you establish a claim in May 20, this is from 2022, but in May 2023, which I will do at the end of next week. And it's calculated for 26 weeks on the 52 weeks. So you can't open another claim on the wages that that your 2023 claim was on. So, and then if you go for 26 weeks of pay, you can apply again in May, actually, of 2024, but only if you've worked and earned enough wages during the year. So many of us, so basically, if you go tomorrow to file a claim with unemployment, they will open a claim for 1 year from May 2023 to May 2024. And then they will calculate how much you get in unemployment, and we'll talk about that later. And then during that year, you have 26 weeks worth of money. So you make 26-week claim. So what's the deal, right? So why are our claims denied? So claiming for education workers is not as straightforward as if you worked at another company. I mean, if you've earned unemployment before, you know that you lose your job through no fault of your own, and you apply for unemployment, people give you your unemployment, you get paid on your unemployment claim, and it's not a problem. Education workers are singled out because they have to meet a bar called reasonable assurance, right? So reasonable assurance is a term that is uniquely applied to education workers. The reasonable assurance concept was introduced when unemployment was extended to nonprofits during the 70s, and it was there to prevent K-12 workers from claiming unemployment during the summer. It establishes that as long as the educational worker is credibly informed, meaning the way we are informed through appointments or even through the word of, an important, the principal of a building says you're going to work in the fall. So that's credibly informed that they have a position with similar earnings. They are reasonably assured of work and cannot qualify for UI. And this is similar in all states except California. So this law, section 590.10 of the New York State unemployment law, stipulates that if you are reasonably or probably assured of at least 90% of your earnings from the previous semester or a full year on an annual appointment or a 3-year appointment, you're not eligible during the summer or winter break. So if you had 2-3 credit classes in the fall and your department has given you 2-3 credit classes in the spring and the courses are listed on CUNY first, or if you have an appointment letter, you have reasonable assurance and your claim will be denied. However, if you've only been offered 1 3-credit class and not 2 as before, you're eligible. And again, what's happened to me sometimes is if you had a 4-credit class in the fall and your department has given you a 3-credit class in the spring, you don't have reasonable assurance because you're only guaranteed 75% of your previous earnings and you do qualify. So, you just have to start thinking about, am I going to get 90% of my earnings in, the next semester? Summers don't apply. So I got a note the other day. It said I had a summer class last year but I don't have it this year. That doesn't apply. This is only semester to semester. Can you claim on that summer appointment? No. I mean, I don't know, John. Do you have anything to add to that about the summer?
Yeah, I do see, I don't see myself anymore for some reason. I'm not sure why. Yeah, let me just say that, yeah, what Pam is talking about and what we're talking about today, because it is, the middle of May and everybody's getting ready for the summer, is we're talking about eligibility for the summer. So this law 590.10 has to do with the rights of people who work for educational institutions to get benefits during the summer and winter breaks. But today, it's for purposes of today, we're talking about the summer. So this means adjunct professors, it means per diem teachers in public schools, it means the cooks at the faculty house at Columbia University, anyone who's employed directly by an educational institution is affected by this law, 590.10. And if you take nothing else away from today's workshop, please remember 590.10, because when and if you call me, I'm going to give, that's going to be the, the quiz is what's 590.10. So what 590.10 says is that your eligibility during the summer depends on what you had before versus what you've been assured of to come. Okay, so if, as Pam just said, if you're on a semester to semester appointment, and if you had, 6 credits in the spring and you've been told this month, May, that you're probably going to have 6 credits again this fall, then you will be denied, you're not eligible. And it doesn't matter that for the past 10 years, you've had a summer course. You've always gotten a summer course, and this summer it was canceled. That doesn't matter, unfortunately. I'm not defending this, please understand, but that doesn't factor in. So it's not a matter of whether you've had summer employment before or not. That's not relevant to the discussion. It really has to do with what you've had in the previous semester or year versus what you were promised or probably assured of in the coming semester or coming year. I hope that's clear.
Doesn't it also indicate that if you're earning more than $504 a week, you can apply? Is that true? Whether it's at CUNY?
Wait, if you're earning more or less, Marcia?
Any more than you can only earn 504. If you're earning
Right.
more than $504, even if you're teaching in the summer, but if you're earning, only less than 504, you can apply.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so let's
me
say
too,
that a
yes.
person, let's say that a person does have some, right? And they don't have reasonable assurance of rehire in the coming year. You can't apply and qualify for benefits if you're working and earning more than 504 gross per week or working in more than 30 hours per week. So some people have other jobs. So if you have another job, even if you are eligible as an adjunct, you still have to deal with that other job. So unemployment is for people who are unemployed or underemployed. Underemployed meaning that you're working fewer than 31 hours a week and you're earning less than 504 gross.
Right,
And
yeah.
also, I
Rebecca,
also say that CUNY, we've never been able to get a spreadsheet or anything of how many unemployment claims a year CUNY has to pay, because they have to pay.
Well, okay.
And they employ 2
Right.
lawyers or 3, to fight the claims, but in the end they have to pay, but we don't know how much they've paid.
Right, but we've had this discussion before. We don't care, okay? We don't really care. What matters to us is getting the benefits for anyone who is possibly eligible. How much they have to pay, is their problem. So, we're not really concerned. I'm not really concerned about that. And as far as the fighting the claims is concerned, let me just say now that in recent years, they've fought less and less, okay? We've had a lot of cases with adjuncts where they've been denied by the Department of Labor or perhaps even challenged by CUNY. And when we get to the hearing, CUNY isn't there. Now, this may not last. They may come back. They may just be biding their time for some reason, but they haven't been actively fighting claims in hearings. We still have to have a lot of hearings because a lot of people are unfairly denied by the Labor Department, but they haven't been actively opposing this, except in a few instances when they're pretty sure that they have a case, and again, we beat them most of the time, but they haven't been so actively fighting. So, people should know that and don't have to be so concerned that they're going to have a battle.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's been my experience.
I want to, yeah, that's been your experience too.
Yeah,
Lisa?
and I mean,
Yeah.
and the adjuncts that I've spoken to, it's they file a claim, and then either they withdraw right before the hearing,
Yeah,
or they don't show up for the hearing.
right.
I think Rebecca's hand is up. Rebecca.
Yes, I just wanted to say, there were a couple questions in the chat, so I think this is a good thing to kind of bring up right now because we're talking about how 3-year contracts aren't eligible, but they also, I sometimes get 3 classes and then I drop down to 2 and then I was eligible, right? So, and then I wasn't eligible because I got a summer class, right? So if you have a summer class that's over 500 for a week and you're not going to be eligible, but what you can do is apply, because then your application is there, and just don't claim it until the summer class ends, and then you can grab it for like 2 weeks.
Okay,
That's one.
Let me just say something in terms of format. I think we should probably go back
Yeah.
to the slideshow and then save the discussion for afterwards.
Sure. And then also, I was just gonna say, like, don't just unmute yourself and start talking, because that's gonna lead to chaos. We should raise your hand if you want to speak.
Right. Okay. Great. Thanks. All right. So we had the obligatory bad news about reasonable assurance. We'll go on to, so, who is likely to qualify? So semester to semester appointments, right? If you have fewer classes semester to semester, as Jon just said, fall to spring or spring to fall, you will that's a qualification. 1-year appointments under the Rosenbaum, did I get it right this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Last time I didn't. Rosenbaum decision, you qualify if you have not been assured of the same or more classes in the coming year that you had in the preceding year. And then 3-year appointments, as Rebecca just said, they're more difficult to qualify. But if you had more earnings during the preceding year than you have in the following year, you're eligible. That's the 9 credits down to 6 credits. NTA appointments, right? You have to meet the threshold of 90% of the last annual or semester appointment. And again, summer classes don't count towards any of the qualifications. So if you had a summer class this year and you didn't last year and you didn't get it this year, it just doesn't, they just don't count. So, and when the wages are disqualified, the DOL, the Department of Labor, will send you a notice of determination. I've gotten many of those with all kinds of numbers on it, stating that CUNY has given you assurance. And if you disagree, you ask for a hearing within 30 days of the date of the determination notice. Please keep all your documentation, because I actually had, I went to a hearing and they asked me for the letter of determination. So just because you're going for a hearing and it's at the DOL doesn't mean that they actually have all the information. So, it's something to just keep in mind.
Right. We should break in here and just say that going for a hearing these days involves answering a telephone call from the judge. Since the pandemic, there are no in-person hearings. It's all by telephone.
Right. Yeah. And I remember last year we went through every single document that I had, that they sent me. And then I was like, well, no, I have another notice of determination. And they're like, well, we never saw it. So, I mean, I won that case, but I still regularly go to hearings. Because somebody has
on the phone. I just want to make
yeah, they're all on the phone. Right. Exactly. All right. So If the DOL deems you eligible, CUNY has the right to object, as we just said, to your eligibility and ask the DOL to change their eligibility determination based on new information or for a hearing with the DOL. You'll be notified that CUNY has requested a hearing, and later you'll receive a hearing date. And, you know, even though I wasn't, you know, even though as I said, even though I wasn't given the same amounts of credits, CUNY still filed an objection, and then they didn't show up for the meeting. All right, so you figured out that you're eligible. So we'll start to look at, you know, what it looks like when you file your first claim. I do have a form that I'd like everybody to fill out. I'll get it at the end, but basically, have you done this before? So when you file your first claim, you're supposed to get a record of employment when you have separation from the university. Do the HR offices give it out? Almost never. CUNY is obligated to fill out this record of employment for you, but you can ask for it, and sometimes the HR office knows what you're asking for. Sometimes they don't. So but what it does give you is it gives the employer name, the payroll record, where it's kept, location, all of this information that's really helpful to you, especially because it has the EIN number. If you can't find the employer identification number or the EIN number, you will need that before you fill out your first claim. They're going to ask for that. Can you do it by giving them the address and the name? Yes, but it's really helpful if you just have it right at the start. Sometimes, at least at City College, we can find it that record, the EIN number, right on the website, but not everybody has that. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, not the moment. That's fine. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the EIN number, again, I guess I could say, if you don't have the EIN number, you can still, your application will still go through. So don't.
Yeah, sometimes I think it takes a little longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But it's there on your W-2. Yeah.
Right. So, right. Yeah. So, filing your first claim, it's going to, you have to create an account if you didn't do that. If you've never filed before. Sorry, I have to clear up my computer screen. Yeah. So you file an account, and you can see that it sign in or create a new account, and then and then you're going to select the file a claim to start the process, and then the next thing, you need a valid driver's license or a non-driver ID, the EIN of your employer. I chose the last work day. I did not, and I usually don't choose the last day of the semester, although sometimes I have, because I just thought they were just being cute. I don't know, John, what do you recommend? I usually use my last work day. Like, my last work day will be May 17th this year.
But are you going to be
so that's what I use as my date. I'm sorry.
Are you going to be grading exams and handing in grades after that?
Yeah, and then I hand in grades after that.
Okay. So I would wait until after you've done everything. Okay.
Right.
And,
okay.
The semester actually, I think, has a beginning and an end date, right?
Yes.
And my advice to people is wait until after the end date. Even if your work is finished a week before, the semester isn't over. If the semester isn't over until, May 25th or something, wait until after that to apply.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's my view.
Well, when you do that, there is nothing that they can say about your claim. So the next thing is you're going to get some terms. You'll have to respond, and I've seen them in different ways. So these are 2 terms of application, and then here in your personal circumstance, they ask you for your ID, how many employers you have, and then they're going to ask for the ID of your employer, which is your FEIN number, the date, the last date you worked, right? And so John was saying to wait until the end date of the semester. And that's really the safest way to do it, is to wait till the end date of the semester as your last date. Then they'll ask you for a list of places that you've worked in the last 18 months. So just, give every place you've been. Some people I know of have gotten their claims because they worked at places other than educational institutions, right? So they get a claim, and then some of the money from CUNY is excluded, but they get a claim on something else. So, just make sure you fill out everything there.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I could just
Yeah, go
add
ahead.
into that, because that's important. They're asking you, where have you worked in the last 18 months? So you tell them every place. And if there are, other than colleges that you've worked at, I mean, the example I gave at a previous workshop was an art historian who had two jobs, working as an art history adjunct professor and working for the Metropolitan Museum, right? So the earnings from the Metropolitan Museum are countable, and you need a certain amount of countable earnings to establish a claim. The earnings from her art history adjunct work may not be counted, but even if they're not, if you have sufficient earnings from the Met, then you're in, okay? You may get a lower rate of benefits, but still you have enough. So, when we say educational institutions, we're talking about colleges and schools. We're not talking about nonprofit museums or things like that. Those are not affected by 590.10, okay? Only colleges. So, a lot of adjuncts have other jobs. They have jobs at various colleges, or they have jobs at colleges and other things. You want to report everything, and you're supposed to report everything, and everything is possibly countable, potentially countable towards a claim, and will raise your rate. The more earnings you have in the previous 18 months, the higher your weekly benefit rate. So you want to be sure to tell them every place you've worked, even if it's short-term or, whatever, even if it's
Exactly.
independent contract work, it may be misclassified as independent contract work, but it's actually countable earnings. So, all of that is important.
Great, thanks, John.
Oh, yeah, I see, can I just jump in, because I see a lot of people asking the usual questions about, do pensions and Social Security get counted? No, they don't. Okay, you don't have to worry about if you're getting Social Security, if you're getting a pension, unless you've just recently retired from CUNY and you're getting a CUNY pension, then that would be subtracted from whatever you might be eligible for in benefits. But other than that, if you have a pension from earlier from some other employer, no, that's not going to be counted against your claims, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right, yeah, I get a lot of CUNY questions. It's like, if you have, and they just subtract whatever you're getting from your unemployment. But it's
Well,
only
if you're
CUNY
getting
pension.
a pension from a base period employer, that's the only
Right.
circumstance. Okay.
Okay.
But other than that, pensions
Right.
are fine. You can get a very rich pension from some other job, and doesn't matter,
Right, that's great.
Yeah.
I see that Marcia had her hand up.
There's a bunch of questions in the chat that have to do with not quite this part, but 3-year appointments and
Okay,
eligibility.
well, let's hold those back,
Okay.
unless it's specifically about this. I'm just gonna run through this, and it's for most of those people who this is their first time filing, and I just want to make sure they kind of get a feel for it. All right,
Yeah.
so you have so do they still ask you, John, if it's total income or your average income over the quarters? They'll usually ask you for how much you think you earned. And they'll ask you either total income or average income. I usually give the average per quarter, sort of, what I think I earned per quarter.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm not absolutely sure, and I can't see the tiny print on the screen here
sorry.
too well. So I'm not sure,
trying, yeah.
but
Okay, yeah.
whatever they ask you, try to answer it as best you can. They have wage information from your employer. Okay, so if you don't have to
Right.
provide them with the dollars and cents, they're going to get that. So
Right, but
if
sometimes,
they ask
John,
you just guess at.
one of the issues we faced a number of times with certain colleges was that they did not report in a timely manner. So what happened was that and it happened to me actually, the employer did not report your wages properly or in time. And so when you went to make the claim, they didn't actually have the wages there.
Right.
Please,
Right.
please, please keep all of your stubs. Keep all of your pay stubs. I mean, that's what they required. I had to send them like
Yes.
a fax.
Yeah, that is something important. If you still get pay stubs, okay? I talk to a lot of the people these days. who
Somewhere
don't
we
pay
get
stubs,
them.
But if you get them, keep them,
Yeah,
keep them for
absolutely. Because I
consideration.
had to send, like a 50-page fax over to the DOL.
And actually,
Okay.
if you don't get them, ask for them. In my opinion,
Right.
people should get pay stubs. It is a legal requirement that employers provide pay stubs showing what your gross earnings are, what's being taken out for which taxes and Social Security and so on, and your
Right.
year-to-date earnings. So, it's important to
Yeah.
have that.
Well, I think a lot of people get them electronically now, and I do in one case and not on the other, but so
Download it,
another
print
thing,
it.
I'm
That's
sorry.
I would say print it, download it and print it,
Yeah, exactly.
because employers either do it that way or they just don't do it at all. I mean, so, and that can be a problem.
All right, so then you'll get a few questions about your willingness to start work immediately. Answer as accurately as possible. But this does impact when, how they view your claim. So if you're willing, you have to be willing to start work immediately. That's and I am. I mean, if you can find me a job, immediately, that would be great. But generally, I answer yes, I'll start immediately. And severance and holiday pay, we don't get any, so that's usually a no. If you got some kind of severance pay, I would be shocked. All right.
Let me just, if I can interject here.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the availability. In order to qualify for unemployment, you have to be available for work. So if you are leaving the country for the summer, do not claim unemployment. That's not allowed, okay? If you're going to some other part of the United States for the summer, you have to let them know that, and there has to be a presumption that you are still looking for work in that other place. It's not a matter of if they give me a job. You're actually supposed to be available
Right.
and actively seeking work. Now, they're not going to ask you for your work search record unless they suspect that you're not available and looking. So if you are claiming from Vermont, they're going to, somebody's got their mic.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Can somebody mute? Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry, John.
Yeah. If you're claiming from a vacation place, right, they're going to suspect that you might be on vacation and not really available for work. And they might ask you questions about where have you been looking. So again, you have to be able to credibly say, I'm available for work. Because if you're really doing something else during the summer, then you shouldn't be claiming. And
Right.
under no circumstances you're allowed to claim from outside the country. Even if you're outside the country looking for work, doesn't matter. You're not allowed to claim benefits. That's very illegal to claim benefits from outside the US, or to have somebody else doing it for you. That's even more so, don't do
Yeah.
that. So,
Right, exactly. So
just cautious. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. And well, I recently saw, I think it was last year, where they did ask for your work search record.
They can. They
Yeah.
don't
I mean,
always,
they
but
ask.
they can.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And they can also ask you to set up a mandatory appointment to talk about where where you would like to look and what your work history is. You have to do that or they'll cut off your benefit. But again, with most people, they don't bother you. They're not going to ask you name the places you've been looking unless you wave a red flag.
Right.
So.
Great. All right. So again, workman's compensation, claiming, are you on disability? All of these questions. Obviously, most of us who are claiming unemployment are not. Here's where it goes into detail about your most recent employer, but they're going to ask you for everyone, who's been, who you've worked for. And on this page, when it asks for the first day, I go to my first appointment date, right? So I go back to 2012 when I got my first job. However, When I first started working at CUNY, I just go back to September of 2012. That's how I judge my first appointment date. Although I have to say that that's not the way CUNY sees us. CUNY sees us as being hired at the beginning of every semester, which is unpleasant, but true. You know, and let's see, remember to choose lack of work. So this is the thing. Choose lack of work for the reason you are unemployed. That's what I usually choose, John, but do you have any advice specifically about those choices? It'll say lack of work.
Lack of work is usually it. If the semester is over and there's no further work for you, that's lack of work. So
Right,
yeah,
okay.
the key question in the application is why have you stopped working your most recent job? So if your most recent job is adjuncting in the spring semester and the semester's over and you now don't have any work, then that's lack of work. Now they're also going to ask you, in addition to that, further down on the page, are you employed by an educational institution, and are you between years or terms? And the answer to both of those questions is yes. Okay, don't say no to that, because that can get you into trouble. So the answer is yes. That will trigger a 590.10 questionnaire. Okay, they're then going to ask you, what have you been told about what's coming up? That's what the questionnaire is going to ask you, not on the application, but probably a few days later. You'll get that. Okay.
Right.
So you want that. You want to tell them. You want to give them the information they need to approve your benefits. So, but it's very important to answer that question, because I've had people who have been hit with overpayments specifically because they said no to that question. You didn't tell us that you were employed by an educational institution and you were in between terms, when in fact you were. So you need to be sure to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. To answer yes to that. Yeah, I am employed by an educational institution, and that you have to make sure. So again, did you earn more than $504 in that week? So, or work more than 30 hours. The hours they count are contact hours. So, we're never ever going to come up on that, but most of us will have earned $504 in the last possible week that we worked, because we have Monday and Tuesday. So, and my claim was denied one year. I didn't even realize it because I had worked, I had earned a wrong amount, and I didn't realize it. And my claim was thrown out, and I had to reapply all over again. So make sure that the week you apply, you have not earned more than $504 or worked more than 30 hours. All right. So then you're going to be, after all of this, and your 590.10, application, your claim is submitted. So what's next? And this is, I don't know, again, this has been one time I needed to call the DOL to finish the claim, another time I did not. So, but it could take up to 5 to 6 weeks to get your claim approved. I don't know, John, are they running faster now? I mean,
well, it varies, so I mean, once you apply, you should get before too long what's called a monetary determination in the mail, which will list what they understand to have been your earnings in the last 5 completed calendar quarters. You want to check that and make sure that that's accurate. And it will also tell you this is what your benefit rate per week is going to be. So if you don't get that within 2 or 3 weeks, you should call me, because that should come pretty quickly after you apply. Then you usually do have to wait, I'd say 4 or 5 weeks before the benefits kick in. You want to be claiming each week. Each week you have to certify, which means that on Sunday, or if you can't do it on Sunday, you do it on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. You're certifying for the preceding Monday through Sunday. They ask you the same half a dozen questions every week. It just takes a few minutes. Did you work this past week? Did you decline any offers of work this past week? Were there any days when you were not available this past week? And the answers are usually the same each week, and then you're certified and you qualify for those benefits. So yes, but the benefits don't begin immediately. You will get them, you'll get a big batch, after 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and then you should get them weekly after that.
Right,
By direct deposit or on a key card, depending on what you have chosen.
right. Yeah, and if it doesn't come, I'd say after 6 weeks, if you're not getting your benefits and you have no reason why, or
Yeah,
it's, or yes, call John.
fine. Yeah.
Call John.
6 weeks go by, you haven't gotten them, call me. I'll put in an email to the Department of Labor and say, why haven't you released this person's payments? Usually that'll nudge them to do it, or they'll call you if there's some issue. See, the thing is, it's still, for reasons we don't understand, very, very difficult, nearly impossible to get through to the Department of Labor on what's called the TEL service line, 888-209-8124. You can't get a live person. So that's where we come in. Okay, it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. So, if you're having trouble getting through, if you're not getting any money, if you're not getting any word from them, that's when you call us, because we can email them and they'll respond. They'll either call you to clear up whatever problem there is, or they'll release the benefits or whatever. That's how we troubleshoot.
Right.
So, that's a big part of what we've been doing, particularly since the pandemic began. So again, don't hesitate. If 6 weeks go by since your application and nothing is happening, just call and we'll do our best, and we'll get right on it.
The other thing that I want to go through is when you've been claiming, so, you've been, what is it? Oh, here. Oh, let me go back. You've been claiming, and suddenly the thing that made, that qualified you for unemployment, that you didn't have reasonable assurance is suddenly taken away. So semester to semester, you should stop claiming the minute you think, or the minute you know that you're no longer eligible for unemployment. That is another way that you can be hit with a penalty or an overpayment, and you'll have to pay back the money. I mean, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, John, but I know that.
I'm sorry, finish your sentence.
No, go ahead.
In other words, if you suddenly get a bunch of courses in the middle of July, and you up until then you haven't had them, you've been eligible up until then, but now you're no longer eligible. So you should stop claiming if you've suddenly gotten this assurance, or whatever. This happens, particularly at the very end. I mean, people will get courses in the middle of August or 2 weeks before the semester, and then you should stop claiming because you're no longer eligible.
Right.
And if there's a question about it, again, you can call the Department of Labor, you can call us, you can communicate with the Department of Labor, you can upload to them, and send through the secure message center on your online account. You can send them the email you've gotten from the department chair offering you these courses and say, I've now received these, what do I do? Full disclosure is good. You don't want to overdo it, but full disclosure is fine.
Right.
There are two hands over there. Excuse me. There are
Hold
two
on
people
one
with hands
second.
up.
Ganesh, one sec. I just wanted to repeat that when you fill out the 590.10 form that asks you about your educational institution, you need to make sure that you put in, and for the annual appointment, I always make sure to write that I do not have reasonable assurance because I have an annual appointment and I have only received classes for the 1 semester and not the 2. I write that all the time. It's very helpful because it establishes, number one, for new people, for new claim adjusters, right? Why you don't have reasonable assurance. It also explains to them exactly. I give them monetary, I give them exactly how much money I earned, how much money that I'm now slated to earn. I try to be as detailed as possible in that why I don't have reasonable assurance part where you get to explain. That's kind of important, at least for my claims, because it helps to establish the conversation if the claim adjuster has to come back to you. I don't know, John, what do you think? That's what I always do.
I mean, you don't want to overdo do it. But again, if you have a 1-year appointment letter, you want to submit that to them. I would, say, actually send them the 1-year appointment. And then they'll
Right,
see
yeah.
that, you're eligible, under Rosenbaum,
Right,
if you meet the other qualifications. So,
Right, yeah.
full disclosure is good,
Yeah.
again, you don't assume that they know what's going on in your life. You kind of have to lead them by the hand and let them know.
yeah.
Don't be afraid to do that.
And then claiming partial benefits, I just wanted to let you know that if you don't work, if you work fewer than 30 hours or you earn 504 in a week, you're still eligible for
Yes.
unemployment.
Yes, if you earn less than 5.
Right, you earn less, that's it.
Right. Partial.
And right, and then stop certifying if you become, so you can certify over, during the 26 weeks that you have over the whole year, as long as you have no reasonable assurance and you have a claim. I mean, you're going to certify for 10 weeks during the summer, and say you lose a class in the spring, and you don't have reasonable assurance, you can claim again, you pick up your claim. So it's always open.
It's open for a year. It's in
A
existence
year,
for a
always
year.
open for a year, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And there's a waiting week at the beginning. The first week you claim you don't get, it's called a waiting week. That only happens once. So, again, if you resume claiming during the course of the 52 weeks, later on, there's no waiting week because you've already done your waiting week at the beginning.
Right, I'm not even sure why that exists, but anyway. So your claim is denied or the benefits termination is 0, ask for a hearing. Call John, ask for a hearing.
Well, call me and I'll tell you whether you realistically have a chance of winning. Okay. I
Right.
mean, there are people who call me and they tell me what's going on. And then I say to them, look, you have a perfect right to ask for a hearing if you want to, but this is why I think you don't actually qualify. I mean, that does happen. So,
Right.
I will be honest with you and tell you, what I think. But if you are denied, you do have an absolute right to ask for a hearing, no cost, and it's easy. You can do it from your kitchen table or your living room because it's all by telephone. And, it's not like going in front of Judge Judy. It's very straightforward and factual. So we
Yeah.
encourage people not to be afraid of all this.
Right.
Very important.
Great. All right. And that ends the presentation part of this, but I know there are lots and lots of questions. So I would so Marcia and then Ganesh.
No, wait a second, Pam.
Oh,
There have been a series of questions asked in chat, and I asked people to hold off until the Q&A.
oh, okay.
So could we go back to some of those?
Sure. I think Ganesh has hand up for a long time, as did Marcia.
Yeah, that's what I was
So-
gonna say. Let's,
So let
them
me
and
take
then
the
get to
2
the
of them
chat.
and then we'll go in order. Marcia?
Okay, there were 3 questions. One, if you file at the end of May, does that in some way limit your time, the 26 weeks, or is it you would get credit for the last week of May and then proceed? It wouldn't negatively affect you that you applied the end of May.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, if you do apply at the end of May, you apply when you become unemployed, right? And whenever you apply, that begins your 1-year claim, your 52 week.
Okay, that's good.
long claim,
Next question.
right? Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Next question. For how many weeks do you have to be earning less than 504? It could just be 1 week. It doesn't, as long as you keep earning less than 504, you're eligible. If you start to earn 510, you got to drop out.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, look, let's say that you have a valid claim for the summer, but you also have a part-time job during the summer. And sometimes you get a lot of hours and you make more than 504. So you don't claim that week because you've made more than 504. The following week, your hours go down and you make less than 504. You resume
Okay, good.
claiming where you left off. They'll ask you,
Okay.
why didn't you claim last week? Were you working? You'll say, yes, but I made more than 504. And they'll say, fine. So you can stop and start. That's, I guess, the point. You're allowed up to 26 weeks worth of unemployment over a potential 52-week period. and you can stop and start and pick up where you left off and you don't.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, last question. What about fear of retaliation? Because, I mean, and I had been a grievance counselor for many years, and let me tell you, there was retaliation, and it's very hard to prove. So I don't know what John or Pamela would say about that. You know, how do you balance that little tightrope?
Yeah.
And also,
yeah.
Pam, how do you justify unemployment when you have a 3-year?
I
That's
don't
it.
have a 3-year. But and John could probably
Yeah, let's
ask
talk about
about
the
a
3-year in a
3-year.
second.
Yeah,
Okay, but first I'll give my speech about retaliation, which I've given before, which is that in our experience, and again, I'm only speaking for myself in terms of people who have called me, I've seen really only one instance of retaliation, and that person filed a grievance and won and got money. You know, people should not be afraid to apply for unemployment because they think they're going to be retaliated against. They need you, okay? They need you. You know, and they're not going to retaliate against you because you're applying. Don't be afraid. If you're eligible, you have a right to apply, you should apply. If there's any, you know, whiff of retaliation, call me and let me know, and we can act on it, because that's very serious and that's not supposed to happen, and it's illegal, and CUNY knows it. So I really don't think that people should worry about that. Now, in terms
and I
of
just wanted to underscore, John, that the money for unemployment comes from CUNY Central, not from your department. If there's
Yeah.
retaliation, I mean, it doesn't, you know, and I've heard of a couple of instances. I've also heard of people, unfortunately, John, not applying because they were too afraid.
Well,
that
that's
the
exactly the
department,
point.
and
That's the
that's
point
the,
I'm making.
and
Yeah,
that's
no, you shouldn't be afraid. If you need the money
No.
and you want to apply, you have the right to apply if you
exactly.
qualify, you know. Okay, now on the 3-year, let's just talk about that. So if you have a 3-year appointment, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that guarantees you 6 credits of work for 3 years, right? For 6 semesters, all right? Or the equivalent in pay if they don't give you 6 credits of work. So that's a floor, all right? And some people just get the floor, right? They get 6 credits in the fall and they get 6 credits in the spring. Then if let's say you just finished your first year of a 3-year appointment and you got 6 credits in the fall and 6 credits in the spring and no more than that, you're not eligible for unemployment this summer, because under the 3-year contract, you have a guarantee of at least as much work next year as you had this year, okay? However, if you had more than the floor, let's say that, you see, just because they have to give you 6 credits doesn't mean they're not allowed to give you 9 credits. So let's say that they gave you 9 and 9 last fall and this spring. Then you might be qualified for unemployment this summer, unless they've given you some assurance that you're going to get 9 and 9 again next year. Okay, if all you have so far is the 3-year contract guaranteeing you 6 and 6, 6 and 6 is not 90% of 9 and 9. All right, so then you would be eligible. So it really depends on each individual's circumstances. But I know that there are a lot of people who have 3-year contracts who do only get the minimum. They get 6 and 6 consistently for 3 years. But if you do get more, you know, then you might be eligible if you are not promised as much as the higher amount that you have. So I hope that that makes that clear. So, you know, I mean, it's a little harder to qualify when you have a 3-year appointment, because you do have a guarantee of something. You know, it's a guarantee in writing, you know, in a contract. But again, it depends on whether or not it is 90% of what you had the previous year. Okay, so that would be my answer. So it's not that 3-year appointees don't get benefits. You know, I'm not saying that. It's that it might be a little bit harder, but not necessarily impossible.
Can I ask a question that came up a number of times in the chat related to this, Pam and John? That is the following, that a number of people who have 3-year appointments want to know that if their chairs or other designee has told them that they've got the 3-year appointment, but if there's low enrollment, their classes are going to be canceled or given to full-timers. Does that matter at all?
Well, but the 3-year appointment
of
still guarantees
eligibility.
you. Well, my understanding, again, I'm not with the PSC and you all
Yeah.
are, but my understanding is the 3-year contract guarantees you either 6 credits of work or 6 credits of pay. Am I right, Marcia? I see your hand up.
Yes. But
The
John,
thing
I
is-
just want to
the thing-
point. Marcia, go ahead.
Oh, the 3-year is sacred. They cannot wiggle around it. So that if they say, well, we have low enrollment, you know, and blah, blah, they have to give you not this is pay. They have to give you try and give you either a makeup semester at some point in the 3 years or non-teaching work in enough hours to compensate for the teaching work, because the non-teaching work is 60% of the teaching work. So we have many cases now where we have prevailed because the 3-year contract, they cannot wiggle out. Now, on the other hand, in the past 3-year contract, it said if the college could prove exigency, we had 2 arbitrations, 2 fights about that. And the arbitrator said, well, they would have to prove this financial exigency. At Medgar Evers, we filed, they had to reinstate 20 adjuncts because they couldn't prove financial exigency. At Bronx College, where they also didn't reappoint 20 or a number of 3-year people, they proved, quote unquote, with charts and blah blahs, that they had financial exigency and they weren't obliged. So it's a complicated thing and we're fighting it. We're fighting it. But for the most part, we should think of the 3-year contract as a contract.
Right. Well,
I
so, but Marcia, to that point of CUNY messing around with the 3 years, it still had to go to a grievance. And the grievance process takes time, no matter what you look at, it takes time. And the question really is, if my chair has told me that my assurance, even under my contract, isn't so reasonable, and I apply, for that, if they've written to me and said, hey, I'm going to take away your classes if we don't have enough classes for full-timers, that denotes, John, I think, that there's no reasonable assurance even
Well,
with
sure.
the contract.
Well, if they put it in writing, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
but I mean, I guess I haven't heard of that. And I've never gotten a call from somebody with a 3-year contract who got something in writing from a chair saying, we may not be giving you the 2 courses that we're obligated to give you under the 3-year contract. I've never gotten it. But if that happens, people should call me. And I would say, yeah, if they tell you we're not going to give you as much work, then they're telling you,
Right.
But again, that has to really happen. So, I get a lot of people who call them. I've had, not a lot. Some people have called me and they've said, it doesn't matter. The 3-year contract doesn't bind CUNY. And my understanding is that it does. Is that's why PSC got it, was to bind them to give a certain number of adjuncts a guarantee of a certain minimum amount of work for 3 full years straight.
Right.
And as far as I know, that's been on, but I don't know everything out there. Maybe there are exceptions to this.
So, yeah.
Call me if you're an exception.